Captain Peter Cutsey, South Korea. This is my briefing room. Today's topic and briefing is on an engine failure for whatever reason on final approach. We are in South Korea, the southwest part of Korea, in the Muan Airport area. And we are planning an ILS Yankee to runway 01 at said airport. This is our position here. It's not to scale with respect to the runway 01. That's our planned approach runway. And on the left side of the screen, we have the actual approach, our KJV. And it's an ILS Zulu to runway 01. We'll be talking about specific things, such as what is the actual procedure if encountering an engine failure for whatever reason. Today's example will be severe damage due to a bird strike. What does Boeing recommend? Incidentally, most airlines worldwide follow what Boeing say. We've jumped over to the other monitor in the simulator. We are at 3,000 feet, and we were on vectors for the ILS to runway 01. The weather I'm using is surface wind at 110 at 2 knots. The visibility is 9,000 meters. A few clouds at 4,500 feet. Temperature 2 degrees, -0, QNH 1028, and no significant weather. And as you can see with the screen that I'm sharing with you at the present time, a beautiful day. We are going to talk about what specifically does the aircraft manufacturer recommend, and most airlines follow the recommendations of the manufacturer. Many things you can brief on at the beginning of a flight sequence. You can't brief on all of them. You follow your company SOPs to what related items. Normally, an engine failure or a malfunction prior to V1 on takeoff, which requires a rejected takeoff. And then after V1, again, engine malfunctions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not too often have I seen in airline SOPs to brief on an engine malfunction on final approach. You probably have actually experienced that on your initial course on the airplane, your type rating course. But I think more emphasis should be placed on what can happen when you are close to the ground on final approach. The scenario, or there are actually two scenarios, basically what we're going to discuss. In this first video, we're going to discuss scenario 1, and in the next video, we'll discuss scenario 2. Let's just review what Boeing have to say regarding engine failure on final approach. What you're going to hear me speak about now is word for word from Boeing's current FCTM for both the 737NG and the 737 MAX. Same. If an engine failure should occur on final approach with the flaps in the landing position, so you've gone by the final fix normally, you've configured with the gear down and landing flap, and you've probably completed the landing checklist. The decision to continue the approach or execute a go-around should be made immediately. So they recommend two options. I agree with them. But because the unexpected is unexpected, the pilot should have, at some time recently, talked or briefed about what would we do in the event that. And a good idea that I always did when I briefed when I was flying on the line was I picked different scenarios. I did what my company asked me to do. I followed their SOPs, but I added one extra non-normal that the company didn't particularly state that was an absolute requirement. So this statement, the decision to continue the approach or execute a go-around, has to be done immediately. All right. If the approach is continued, that's I'm calling scenario one. We're going to look at that today. All right. And so that's an if statement with an and statement. And sufficient thrust is available. All right. You lose an engine, you fly the airplane, you input appropriate rudder, you increase to keep the airplane straight and the turn slip indicator lined up, and you add power. All right. So that decision has to be made immediately. If there is sufficient thrust, continue. So you will increase thrust, you will use rudder, you'll be doing this simultaneously to keep the turn slip indicator centered and the control wheel centered, and then trimming. All right, fine. And if that works and you can maintain the airspeed, carry on the way you are and land the airplane. So if the approach is continued and sufficient thrust is not available for landing flap, in other words, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to do that one today. Actually, we're going to do three scenarios. One where sufficient thrust is available, one where it isn't. That's what we're going to do today. And then the third scenario is a go-around. Following the go-around procedure. All right. So if approaches, if sufficient thrust is not available, it's going to be today. Retract flaps 15 and adjust thrust on the operating engine. Command speed should be increased to 20 knots above VREF. It's already 5 knots above VREF, so add another 15 knots immediately, calling for flaps 15. And the wind additive should be added as required. So that is the scenario that we're going to look at today. Scenario one in this series of 3 videos will be, the first scenario would be go around and follow the go around procedure as depicted. The second scenario we're going to do today, insufficient thrust is available. So we're going to, of course, keep the airplane straight, use enough rudder, trim, thrust, calling for flaps 15, and have the pilot monitoring add another 15 knots to what's already there. So totally, in today's scenario, we're going to use flaps 40 because the runway is under construction and the last 1,000 feet of runway 01 is unavailable. So we're really, to round off figures, we're really at 8,200 feet. And that's why we've selected auto brake 3. All right, so that's the scenario. So the thing you've got to do is to, I like to think in threes, try to get things done smoothly. You fly the airplane, of course, first. You're going to require, the moment you've had, in today's scenario, it's going to be a bird strike, and we're going to lose engine number 2, severe damage. And we'll look at the N1, and we'll find that it is at 0. So that identifies it as severe damage. But you fly the airplane, enough rudder to keep the airplane straight, thrust as required, flaps 15, pilot monitoring adds another 15 knots. Meanwhile, you're trimming the airplane. All right, so let's get on to it. So we'll go dynamic again. We've been cleared to turn left to a heading of 055 degrees. And on that heading, cleared to intercept and the localizer to runway 01, and vents cleared for the ILS approach to runway 01. Warlock and single channel. Heading bug around to runway course. We're currently 22 miles from touchdown. The wind is virtually calm. As you can see, there's no windsock on our nav display. We'll just bring up the engine instruments of the upper ICAF so we can view the thrust being set when we encounter the problem. It's a lovely day. The airport area is actually in sight. We're at 19.1 nautical miles to touchdown. So let's just review again in the event of an engine failure, once we're configured for landing, and we'll wait till we are below 1,000 feet. We fly the airplane, enough rudder to keep the airplane straight and extra thrust. And we decided that we're going to follow scenario 2. We'll select flaps 15 and ask the pilot monitoring to add 15 knots to the already added 5 knots added to VREF. So that'll be 20 knots added to VREF at flaps 15. And we'll see how nicely that works. And we'll fly down to minimums and we'll take it from there.